So as we go through this first chapter of the Mishnah of Megillah, we're into halachic poetry. We're in the string of expressions that a lot of people call the Ein Bains, because it's a string of expressions that all begin with Ein Bain. There's no difference. Or to be more precise, Ein Bain ... Ella. There's no difference except. And we started off by saying there's no difference between Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni. There's no difference between Adar 1 and Adar 2. That's how we got onto the whole subject of no differences. But now we're freely associating, and it's as if we're remembering back to the days of the temple. And remember, the Mishnah began by remembering back to Yehoshua bin Nun. So we are in Galut. Purim is the first festival, the first Jewish festival to be observed in Galut, to be created in Galut. So we're in Galut, and yet, and later in the Masachet, we're going to discuss how we run a shul, how a Jewish community runs, and yet at the same time as we're thinking about how to behave in Galut, we're also thinking back to how we used to behave in the land of Israel. So we'll see this tension as we go through the Ein Bains. And we're going to begin with a neder. We're going to begin with an oath. Ein Bain hamudar hana v'chavero lemudar mimenu ma'achal. There's no difference between someone sworn not to benefit from his fellow and someone sworn not to benefit from his neighbor's food. So maybe you'd make an oath. You'd say, oh yeah, I swear that this person can't have any benefit from me. Or I'd swear this person can't have any benefit from my food. It's not a very neighborly thing to swear, actually. Anyway, there's maybe that's the connection with Purim, of course, because at Purim the community has to come together. That's one of the features of Purim, that what seemed to be a community that was not observant. A community that was scattered and disconnected somehow came together at Purim. That's really one of the things that we learn from the Megillah. So maybe that's why this is in the mind of the authors of the Mishnah. But there's no difference if someone is sworn not to benefit from their neighbor or not to benefit from their food. Ela drisat haregel. But setting foot. Now, for example, you might take a shortcut by walking over your neighbor's courtyard. If you're sworn not to benefit from anything that he has, you can't take a shortcut over his courtyard. But of course, if the oath only applies to food, you can. So that's one of the exceptions. Eila drisat haregel. And vessels which are not used for food. Maybe a kli can be anything, right? It could be an item of clothing, it could be a hammer. If you don't benefit from him at all, you can't borrow a hammer. But if you're only prevented from benefiting from his food, well, you could borrow a hammer. You can probably borrow a hammer, but you can't borrow a pot and cook in it. So those are the exceptions. Vessels which are not used for food, and setting foot, that is, setting foot in a courtyard that he owns. Ein bain nedarim li nedavot. There's no difference between a vowed offering and a free will offering. But the vowed offerings carry responsibility. So if and we learned this, by the way, in the Mishnah of Shkalim, that if they get lost, the person that makes the vow has to replace them. Or if they die or become blemished on the way to the Beit Mikdash, the person that made the vow has to replace them. Ein bein nedarim lidavot. That's the difference between a neder and a nedava. Eile she'anedarim chayav be'achariyutam. If it's made with a neder, with a vow, you are responsible for it. Unadavot eino chayav be'achariyutam. And if it's just a nedava, a free will offering, if you know, you can make the offering, but if it gets lost, if it dies, it's not your problem, it's the temple's problem. That's Mishnah 6. Next Mishnah retains us in kind of the world of the Beit Mikdash. Ein bein zav haroeh shtei ra'ayot l'roeh shalosh ela korban. There's no difference between a zav, someone who has an omission, who sees it twice. This is twice in, I think this is twice in 3 days, twice in 3 days. Who sees it twice, l'roeh shalosh ela korban. If you see it 3 times, then you have to bring, you wait for 7 days, you dip, but you also bring a korban. So the third sighting obligates you in the korban. Ein bein mutzara muskali mutzara muchla. There's no difference between a mutzara who's quarantined. Now this is all in the middle of Vayikra, the parsha of mutzara. Someone who develops tsarat, who develops this disease, which is often translated as leprosy, but it's clearly not leprosy, but it's some kind of skin infection. It's associated with slander. Someone who develops this disease is actually quarantined for 7 days. And if nothing changes, he's quarantined for another 7 days. And then if it's gone away, he's let out. But if the disease seems to have definitely taken hold, he's defined as someone who definitely has tsarat, and that is the muchlat. Mutzura musgar is a mutzura who's quarantined, and mutzura muchlat is someone who's declared to be definitely a mutzura. So one of them is just temporarily shut up, and the other is actually declared to be definitely a mutzura. Ein be mutzura muskali mutzura muchlat ela priya ufrima. There's no difference between the 2 categories except disheveling of hair and tearing the clothes. Because if you are definitely a mutzura, your hair is disheveled. Those are the following pasukim. The kohen actually dishevels your hair and tears your clothes. Ein bein tahor mitoch hesger l'tahor mitoch hechlet ela tit ela tiglachat v'tzipurim. There's no difference between someone who's pure after being quarantined. So then, in other words, it's just that the passage of time has made it evident that he's not Mutzura, and one who's l'tahor mitoch hechlet, and someone who's pure after being a definite Mutzura, ela tiglachat v'tzipurim. He has to shave, and he has to bring. These birds are the sacrifice. He has to bring a pair of birds to the temple. And now we come back to Beit Knesset. We go from Beit Mikdash to Beit Knesset. Ein bein sfarim l'tefillin u'mezuzot ela she'asfarim nitkavin b'chol lashon. There's no difference between scrolls and tefillin and mezuzot, except that scrolls can be written in any language. This is really fascinating, and the Rambam, as a universalist, makes clear any language really means any language, any script. You can write a Sefer Torah in any language and any script. That's according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Whereas, Ela sheha utfilin u'mezuzot einan nichtavim ela ashurit, and tefillin and mezuzot are only written in this language called Ashurit. Ashurit is literally Assyrian, but it's actually the square Aramaic script, which was adopted by the Persian Empire in Bavel, basically in Assyria. And ancient Hebrew script looks completely different. Maybe tomorrow I'll bring you a picture of ancient Hebrew script, but the square script that we use today is Aramaic script, and it was adopted by the Persian Empire after they conquered the Babylonians, who themselves conquered the Assyrians. So tefillin and mezuzot have to be written in Ashurit. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, by the way, doesn't agree. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer af Basfarim lo hitiru sheikatvu ele Yevanit. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, no. The only foreign language other than Hebrew that scrolls can be written in is Greek. And by the way, the halacha goes according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Now, we don't write scrolls in Greek today, maybe because we don't speak Greek well enough, but it would seem from the Mishnah that is an option. Why is it that we can't write if we can write a scroll in Greek, why can't we write tefillin and mezuzot in Greek? And there's a wonderful comment in the Gemara, which I couldn't resist bringing to you. The Gemara asks, tefillin and mezuzot, my tama, tefillin and mezuzot, what's the reason? What is the reason that these have to be particularly written in Aramaic script? And that means, by the way, in Hebrew. Whereas, at least according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Sfarim, Torah scrolls can be written in any language at all, any language in the world. As if Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is a universalist. It's really quite inspirational, actually. He's a complete universalist. Why is it? And the Gemara asks, Mishum dichtiv bahu vehayu, because it is written with regard to them, they shall be. And of course, I've written the quotation out large for you on the translation. Vehayu hadvarim ele alvavecha. It's the second pasuk of the Shema. These words shall be, vehayu, they shall be on your heart. But havayatan yehu, as they are, so they shall be. There's something which is absolutely timeless about the words of Shema. Just as they are, so they shall be. We have to write them out in our traditional script. And somehow I don't know why. The Gemara is not asking that we write them out in ancient Hebrew, but it seems that the traditional script at the time of the Gemara was Ashurit, the square Aramaic script that we use today. As they were, so they shall be.